Welcome to episode 136 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies. I'm your host, Dave Ginsburg, and my host, co-host, Warren Sklar is here. How you doing, Warren? I'm like tongue-tied.
I thought I just got a promotion. I was getting excited for a second.
We're co-hosts.
You're the host. I'm just here. I'm good. Cold.
Yeah, me too.
Had to dig out again this morning a little bit, but otherwise, as I told you before we started, it's Friday tomorrow. So
yes, it is. And also want to welcome back to the show, Ms. Shelly Brisbin, the author and podcaster. Thanks for coming back to the show, Shelly. How you doing?
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, and you probably are not experiencing as cold as weather as we are, but
well, we're having a bit of a cold front. I'm in Austin, Texas, and a few days ago it was probably in the 50s, and it's like low 30s now. And because there's rain, the whole city is losing its mind.
Yeah.
We got plenty of snow, so.
Right.
So we got a good show for you this week. Of course, Shelly has a great book, iOS Access for All. We're going to talk about that and accessibility, as well as lots of news stories and a little bit of focus on accessibility this week. So why not we just jump right in and talk about what's going on this week in the world of Apple. First story caught my eye. This is an Apple Insider. More than 100 million people are wearing the Apple Watch, an analyst says. Apple Watch crossed an important threshold in December where wearable hit an installed user base of over 100 million, according to statistics, of course, compiled by an analyst. In the research published by this website, they estimate the adoption is accelerating, which I'm not surprised. About 30 million users embracing the platform in 2020. This figure almost surpasses the number of new Apple Watch users in the last 4 years combined. This is great to see, and I think a lot of people are using the Apple Watch just for, I think, fitness is a big thing, and tracking your health. And Shelly, do you have an Apple Watch? Do you use it?
I do. I don't wear it every single day, but I do have one, and I like it. I was a relatively late adopter. I got a Series 4 after the Series 5s came out because I got a deal, but I enjoy it.
And Warren, of course, as you don't know, Shelly, but last week he upgraded to the Series 6 just because of beta.
It was I put the beta on, and I had the unlock with the mask thing working, and then I broke it, and then I couldn't get it working again, so I wanted to watch. But that's the story of that. But just thinking about it, I remember when people were asking me, what is that thing on my wrist? Not that long ago when I had the Series 0 when it first came out, and they were like, what is it? What does it do? And now it's, you can't go too far without, not seeing one. There's three of us that have them here. They're 3 out of the million. So go for it.
Yes. Many, many millions more, I think, is going to happen. So.
Oh, and with the new face to unlock, this whole thing that's about to drop, I bet it sells a few more.
I bet it does.
With the unlock with the mask. Yep.
To be able to unlock your iPhone with your Apple Watch with a mask on.
Yep.
Then next story, this was a 9 to 5 Mac. iPhone 12 mini sales continue to lag in early 2021, as data is suggesting. New reports today cites data from Counterpoint research claiming that the iPhone 12 mini accounts for just 5% of total iPhone 12 sales during the first half of January in the U.S. This is only the latest report of growing catalog of data suggesting that a weaker than expected demand for the iPhone mini. They're saying that the sales, of course, are about 5%, and this keeps dropping. And actually, I'm kind of surprised because there are a lot of people. In fact, I know a lot of friends I have do like the iPhone 12 mini, but it is pretty small. And as Warren and I both have the 12 Pro Max, it's a little different size there. So, what do you think of this? I wonder if Apple's going to even stop making it, which is very possible.
Maybe. I mean, 5% of iPhone sales is still probably a lot of money. I'm not sure how there's, if their production allows it, that they could just continue making them and just produce less of them next year. were, if they continue on, then, I could see them doing that. I think it was a lot of people were like, we want it because we can't have it. And then when it came out, it was so close to the regular 12 that, people decided not to go that small. But, again, it's not for you. It's not for me.
Right. No, too small. And Shelly, which do you have an iPhone 12 as your personal daily driver?
Personal device. Actually, I own a 10R.
Oh, you lost your mic, Shelly.
I did. Sorry about that.
That's
I
okay.
own a 10R.
Well,
I have.
It just fell again.
That is a little bit. I got to screw that down a little tighter. Sorry about that. So I own a 10R. I have a 12 and 12 Pro sort of loaners right now, and I'm really enjoying them. But I'm sad to hear about the Mini because I was a fan of the SE, and I like the idea that people have options for smaller devices, because I think the sort of relentless race toward larger phones, among other things, makes phones more expensive. And I suspect, and it's not so much an Apple Store thing now because of the pandemic, but I suspect when people line up the 4 phones that have the identical processor and they go, 12 Mini, 12 Pro, I think I'll take a 12. I think probably the 12 cannibalized the Mini a lot, which is too bad.
Kind of the sweet spot. But we're going to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on the 12 that you were able to get some demos from Apple and your accessibility in a little bit here. But yeah, I would not be at all surprised that that Apple decides that they've already, from what the rumors are, saying that the production's starting to curb out a little bit here. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Next story. This was on Mac Rumors. The Gmail iOS app has out-of-date warning after 2 months of no updates as Google delays the privacy labels. Though Google has promised to update its suite of apps, it's going again back to December. We're in February here as we record this. That majority of their apps have gone months without an update, and continues to be an interesting saga to what Google is waiting for. Other than, of course, they don't want to have the tracking with this as well, but. There has been a lot of speculation that Google is hesitant because of the privacy label, but they aren't saying anything, and a lot of negative feedback is out there as you hear it on social media. But there was an update since this article was released that Google has pushed a server-side update that removes the out-of-date warning when attempting to sign into a new account in the Gmail app. So, Shelly, I don't know if you've been familiar with this story or what's been going on with Google and why they're delaying it, but what did you think of this?
I haven't followed it, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and speculate and say a couple things. So first of all, for Gmail specifically, Google has all that information about the contents of your Gmail account back on the server. They don't even need your iOS device, certainly for browsing and for anything else that you're doing on your phone where you're generating new searches and stuff. They'd like to be able to dig into your privacy, but for the Gmail one specifically. Also, how many people are using the Gmail app? I wonder. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do. And actually, you're funny you say that because I don't normally use it, but I do have it on my phone. But I do like the fact that it actually incorporates multi-factor authentication through the Gmail app itself, because I had to sign into my Google account on my work computer today to access something, and all I had to do is open up my Gmail app, and it did the multi-factor authentication. Then you had to tap the number that was on the screen, so it was kind of cool that it did that, and I didn't have to have an authenticator app to do that. So
it's not a bad app, actually. Yeah. I mean, I've used it. I make that joke just because, like, I downloaded a bunch of email apps to try and decide whether I wanted to switch away from mail at one point, and I remember thinking, I like the Gmail app. I have some specific issues with Google Apps because of accessibility, but the Gmail app itself is not terrible. But I don't know many people who are using alternative email apps who have chosen the Google app. Right.
No. I believe our friend Chuck Joyner does use the Gmail app. I think he likes it as his full-time daily driver.
Well, there you go. Good to know.
so if I recall, Warren, what'd you think of this? This continues the saga with this privacy craziness.
I don't use a Gmail app. I do have a Gmail as one of my accounts. I do use the Google app. It's basically it opens up a Google search thing, and then I actually use it more than if I'm looking for something, I don't ask Siri because she doesn't know anything. So I'll go on to this Google app. I'll go on to the Google app, and it actually works pretty well for me. But yeah, I think we mentioned it before. I think they're trying to figure out what permissions they're actually asking for before they actually do this, because I think they're not even sure at this point what they're gonna tell Apple that they're doing. So they're stalling for sure, but I don't think it's fully malicious. I think they're just trying to get their T's crossed, I's dotted, things like that.
The ducks in a row.
Ducks in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. And then next story here is actually a product announcement that Mac Rumors has talked about. It's from our friends at Sateki. They launched a dual-sided 2-in-1 USB charger that's actually for the Apple Watch and the AirPods. It's the launch of a USB-C watch AirPods charger, which is a 2-in-1 accessory that is able to charge both the AirPods and the Apple Watch at the same time. So basically, what you could do is you plug the you plug in the adapter to charge your AirPods in the USB-C port, and then you can lay your watch on top of it, and it's like probably the size of the face of an Apple Watch. And it's exclusively being sold at Apple for $49.95. And it has like I said, it's got a dual side design. Because one side there's an Apple Watch charging puck, and on the other side there's a Qi-based wireless charging. So you can do Qi charging as well as wired charging, and have two devices in a small little package. I thought this was a really neat little product, and it does have it does plug into the side of your MacBook or MacBook Air Pro as the USB-C, and make it really easy to charge your watch. Shelly, do you get into any of the chargers? Do you use any type of chargers besides the one that came with the watch?
I actually bought I got it for Christmas. It's a phone, watch, and AirPods charger, which is kind of great. And so the phone sits at a 45-degree angle, the watch sits on top, and the AirPods sit behind the phone. And it's a real nice little design. I think what you're describing would be great for travel, because it sounds like it's teeny tiny. Just put that in your travel bag and keep that for whenever we get to go out on trips again. You know?
Yeah, that traveling we haven't done in
right,
so long
exactly.
Here.
You remember travel, right?
Yeah. Like you just talked about CES with Tom Merritt, and I was on your podcast, and I did the virtual CES and I missed it. So a lot of traveling that we have missed this past year. So Warren, what do you think of this? Is this something you're going to run out and buy?
Traveling is good. That's what I think.
Yes, it is.
I saw this. I thought about getting it, but I actually have this in two forms. I have both of these things separated. So I have the thing that looks is the thing on the right, the AirPod charger thing. I have something that looks exactly like that, and then I have something similar to the one on the left. So I could glue them together and make my own if I wanted to.
All right, and then a couple stories about Apple TV and apps related to Apple TV 9 to 5 Mac here. CBS and Showtime, which they had a bundle, is going to be no longer available through the Apple TV app ahead of the Paramount Plus launch. If anybody isn't familiar, about a week ago, CBS All Access and Showtime bundle for Apple Plus TV Plus is no longer available, lasting only 5 months since it was launched back in August 2020. So apparently that they aren't getting didn't get much traction for that $10 a month through that bundle. It's no longer going to be able to, if you are already a subscriber of it with that bundle, you can keep it. It's no longer possible to sign up as a new user. So as CBS is preparing to sunset the CBS All Access in favor of their new streaming platform, which if anybody watched the Super Bowl, they had ads all over talking about Paramount Plus, which is going to be launching in the US as we record this, coming up in a little less than a month on March 4th. But they've not officially confirmed this. This seems like the similar type of events when happened when the HBO did it, when they launched HBO Max last year. So it's going to be unclear to see where the bundle goes. Warren, what do you think of this?
My only thought was we were confused about the Super Bowl commercials at first. The first one or two were like, what's going on here? And why all these people here? And they had like what cartoon was it? They had a couple cartoon characters there.
Probably I was SpongeBob, I think.
Was it SpongeBob? Was like, oh yeah, they did the SpongeBob when he sang at the Super Bowl or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the service is going to have on it, but what is it? It's basically CBS and Showtime.
CBS All Access, and then the movies, and probably expanding more of the Paramount, because they have the whole Paramount catalog. So
yeah, it's
getting on the Paramount Network, which used to be Spike TV, if I remember correctly, a while back. It's
getting old. All these
changes,
streaming services is getting old. That's what I think.
Shelly, do you subscribe to any of these types of streaming services, or did you have CBS All Access?
I go back and forth. I'm one of these people who will subscribe for a couple of months and then switch away from it, because I've had CBS All Access. I would like, okay, I'm going to watch some Star Trek for a while, and then I would cancel.
That's what I did.
Right. And I can't tell you the name of a show on Showtime. I mean, I'm sure there are some and that they're lovely, but I can't tell you. And the thing about Paramount, I'm a back catalog person. I love old movies. And honestly, there's a lot of back catalog in Paramount that has not seen the light of day up to now. And I would only be excited about this service if they said, you know what, all that pre-1949 stuff, I love old stuff, will see the light of day. But to be honest, given the number of bundles that are out there, the number of streaming services rather that are just bundling content and basically saying, you're going to have to, the price of entry is going to be something like $10 to $20 a month. It's just, I don't know how they're all going to survive. And the problem is, if they don't all survive, there's going to be a lot of great content out there that's going to be hard to find. And I feel like that's what's going to happen next, is that we're just going to be like, okay, if we don't buy all of them, something's going to die. And then where's all that stuff going to go? And I don't know. And
No, I agree with you. I mean, like HBO Max, they had the TCM catalog of all the old movies on there too. So yeah.
Well, they don't have all of them. See, some of them, that's right.
Right,
but that's the point. Like, you have a service like that, and you rotate back catalog stuff in and out, and you use the most popular stuff to attract audience, which makes total sense. But they don't have any interest in making a complete catalog available, which, as a movie nerd, is what I want.
There you go. And then the other story that fed right into that too was the third generation Apple TV, which we know is losing lots of support as of late. Last week we talked about YouTube is no longer going to be on there. You're going to have to AirPlay. I think the same thing's going to happen to the CBS All Access transition. They're no longer going to have an app that's automatically on that device anymore, since as everybody knows, the Apple TV third gen is got fixed apps. You don't have an app store like you do on the fourth and the 4K version. So you'll start seeing pop-ups that you won't be able to log into that app anymore, and it will be stopped being available as soon as it's released in March. So you'll be doing lots of AirPlay on the Apple TV third gen, I think, pretty soon here. Then it'll become a brick, and who knows, probably soon after that. What do you think, Warren?
I'm surprised nobody's hacked it or jailbroke it yet, because if you remember the first Apple TV,
the first gen,
was big, and even after the second and third were out, people are still buying that first gen because it's like it had a hard drive and you could actually do things with it. So I'm surprised nobody's figured out a way into that thing at this point, because again, they're just going to turn into bricks or cheap AirPlay devices at this point. I think I have 3 laying around my house.
I got at least 2.
I don't know what they're doing, but I could probably use them for something. I just don't know what yet.
Yeah. You use Apple TV, Shelly, and do you have
I never had a third gen one. I have a 4th generation one, which I use on occasion. I mean, I feel bad for anybody who has a 3rd generation one and who hasn't wanted to upgrade. I can't see that there's much point in hacking a device that old. I think you just switch to another platform, especially since Apple content, if that's what you're interested in, is available other places, and even AirPlay. There's smart TVs now, they're getting AirPlay. It's like, what's the point of the old Apple TV? And we're starting to get to the point of what's the point of an Apple TV device, because Apple finally figured out that they had to open up. And there's certain things I like about the Apple TV interface that not the 3rd generation one, because it doesn't support apps and doesn't have the same, level of accessibility and stuff. But that platform overall feels like it's going to have to change and grow and maybe even go away at some point.
Now, does the Apple TV? Do you find that it has Apple done a good job with accessibility on the newer generation?
Generally speaking, I mean they do. It's a little. There are weird things about it. The main issue with accessibility on the Apple TV is the accessibility within apps. And then there are some apps that have done a good job, and you can't assume that because an app is accessible on one platform that accessibility carries over to another. Apple TV is far better than average. Like if you said, all right, give me a streaming platform and give me a bundle full of popular apps, CBS and Hulu and Amazon and Disney and all, just pick half a dozen of them, whichever they are. Overall, the Apple TV is probably going to have among the better levels of accessibility, but that doesn't mean those individual apps are all accessible. And that's not Apple's fault. Apple put out the guidelines and said, here, make it accessible. Mm-hmm. And people like Hulu said, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What did you say?
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I hear you. And then next story here was actually Google Fi has decided they're going to be expanding VPN to iPhone users starting in the spring coming up this year. Google announced that they will be expanding Google Fi's built-in VPN service to the iPhone starting this spring, providing iOS users with another option to ensure that their connection is secure and private on a cellular or Wi-Fi network. Google also says that the VPN is exiting out of beta for Android smartphone users. Like, we don't really care about that. With VPN, users, of course, can stream, browse, and download on encrypted and private connections. And of course, Google Fi used to be called Project Fi when it first came out, and they're now a carrier that's now based and piggybacks off of T-Mobile and U.S. cellular networks. And they did roll it out to iOS devices. I think it was late last year. So, Warren, do you use a VPN at all on iOS? I don't.
Not on iOS. I have one on my Mac. I use it every so often, but not on iOS. I never really. I mean, there's not much you could do on a. Well, there is, but there's nothing I thought about doing. Not that I do anything bad,
Well,
as
you
far
could
as
watch
we
Star
know.
Trek Discovery on Netflix.
You could, or you could, maybe get a hold of, the WandaVision when you don't have Disney Plus. There's things you could do.
Naughty things.
Just the whole VPN with Google. It's when you try to talk to somebody who's like one of those Google security, not jobs, I would like to say, the ones that are so like against Google that like, and then you say, but they're making it private with VPN, and watch their head explode and try to figure out what that's going to mean for them. But my nephew has Google Fi. He's had it since it came out. He's always had a Pixel, or now he has a Samsung, and he likes it. He says it's a weird system. It's not unlimited.
It is.
It's like you pay as you go, but it still comes out pretty cheap for the most part. So I heard decent things about it.
Shelly, do you use a VPN at all on your iOS device?
Back when we were traveling again, I used it primarily for going to unsecured Wi-Fi networks. So I had a deal for a while. I used Tunnel Bear, and for a while, I think you can still do it, where you can buy a year's subscription. And if you buy it that way, it's really cheap. And I would only run it when I was I used to work a lot at coffee shops or when I would travel, and I would just use it for that. Not so much for occasionally media content. There's some stuff from Canada that I wanted to watch, and I would do that. Sure. But I'm not going to Google for my VPN. Sorry, that's just not happening.
Yeah, that's why I was waiting for someone to say that. I said, I'm an Express VPN customer, which I'm very happy, and they have a very good, robust service. And yeah, I agree. I don't think I'd be utilizing any of Google's VPNs.
The nice thing I found out with Tunnel Bear, my subscription lapsed in November. I think I had gotten some sort of holiday-based deal a year ago, and it lapsed in November. And when I was looking at all my subscriptions, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I bet that'll cost me a lot to go back and get. But the deal is still the same, and my account is just sort of sitting there parked waiting. So at some point, if I'm ever able to, go work in coffee shops again, I'll just turn it back on and I'll get that same deal.
Yeah,
at least I hope I will.
You just got to be. What I was going to say is, VPNs are still companies, and if you do like a search on the web, say VPN caught, and then hit enter, you'll find article 7 VPN service found recording user logs, even though they said they don't. And there's a whole bunch of things like that. So I mean, it's everybody thinks they're impermeable with VPNs, but it's still a tech company. So be careful.
Yes, be very careful. And then one last story I have here is another product that I wanted to talk about. Pop sockets. Pop sockets are very popular among. I'm not a big pop sockets fan, but I know a lot of people like them because they got the little socket and you got it right between your fingers. You can hold the phone. Well, they announced today a new pop socket accessory. This was on Mac Rumors actually today as we record this. The Pop Socket 2 Photo. It's a stand that attaches to the back of the pop grip and installs on an iPhone, and now you're able to attach it to any tripod using your pop socket. It comes in black, and it's compatible with the 1/4-inch 20 tripods, which is standard. And they make, of course, a wider range of other accessories. I'm not a pop socket user. I know you're not, Warren, right?
I went through a pop socket phase about 2 years ago where I had a bunch of them. My wife still has a few, and I thought they were doing something with the MagSafe. Did they ever come out with the MagSafe pop sockets?
I believe they did. Yeah, because they've got an actual Qi charger that actually has the indentation that allows you to put the iPhone into there, so it charges.
Yeah. I might look at that. And I saw the product here with the tripod. I mean, if you, I'm thinking about it, and at work we do use a tripod with an iPad and an iPhone here and there, so it could come in handy. But I'm not tripoding myself here at home, so I don't really need it.
I hear you. Shelly, you don't use a pop socket on your phone, do you?
I don't. I like the idea of the tripod. I can think of several uses. Zoom calls, certainly. It probably wouldn't work for a phone because I use an iPad for this, but I like teleprompter apps on the iPad. So sometimes when I'm reading, sometimes when I'm on a podcast or a radio show or something like that, I have to read a script. And so I like to hang the iPad or tripod it or put it high up in some way. And if I could do that with a phone, in theory, that would work. But I think mostly if I used it, it would be for Zoom calls, things like that. So when I don't have my laptop nearby, or sometimes I have a daily meeting I do on Zoom now, and that's right at noon. And sometimes I get really hungry and I'd like to take my phone into my kitchen and be in the meeting on the phone in the kitchen. So,
well, in fact, the camera I'm using right now is using the using the Camo Studio, and I have a 10R sitting on a tripod right next to me now. So
I played with that. That's a fun app. I like it. I haven't used it much, but
yep. So let's go ahead. That's the stories for this week. Let's go into our weekly topic on beta. Beta this week is still at iOS 14.5, beta 1. I didn't see much changes, but there were a lot of settings changes that we found out this week, including Siri setting that allows iOS beta users to set their default music streaming service. They announced these beta versions, but now you actually can go into to the S Lady and set which is your default music service, as well as they're talking about podcasts. So you'll be able to have the ability to do that. And you will also have the ability to do some safe browsing. So Warren, have you the beta guy here? Have you tried any of this yet?
I haven't. I don't have another music service installed on my phone, so I haven't tried that yet. The maps thing I haven't tried yet, but I should. And I haven't tried the other one. I'm still fascinated with the unlock with the mask feature. So
I figured you were.
Yeah, I mean,
go with your headphone mask that didn't pan out too well.
Well, right. Oh yeah, I got this thing from CES, Shelly, that they announced. It's a mask with a built-in microphone and earphones, and they touted
it was horrible.
It was horrible. It was basically something.
I mean, that's 3 points of failure right there. Like, you pay $50 or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, the microphone doesn't work. Well, now I just have a useless thing, and the mask is old and dirty. And okay, yeah.
It was literally like a regular mask, and then if I took a pair of like $5 earphones and like sewed them into it, it was.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
It was horrible.
That does sound like a total CES thing. Like,
the concept is good. If you do it right, it would be good, but it just wasn't done right. But back to what we were talking about. What was it?
So we have the default streaming service is one of the things that's going to be available. And then default podcast player, which I find interesting too. I'm seeing a trend here. I'm seeing a trend that Apple's worrying about their monopolistic ways of having to say, hey, you have to use our apps, but they already gave in on mail. They already gave in on browsers. So now they've moved now on to the podcasting and music player too.
Well, the podcast thing is great. I mean, I think for a long time, Apple has been far behind a lot of its competitors in terms of, I haven't used Apple Podcasts in ages. Every once in a while, for the book, I have to update it every year. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, I guess I better subscribe to a couple things in Apple Podcast. And then I get rid of it as quickly as I can. The music thing I like. I switch back. I'm terrible with subscription services. I switch back and forth. And right now I'm using Apple Music, but I'm probably going to be going back to Spotify at some point. I mainly do it because I have free trials and stuff. But I love the idea that you can switch. And especially if you want to use other devices to play your music, if you're going to AirPlay it, if you're going to go to a HomePod or something like that. I mean, that's anything that'll do AirPlay. And you can use your phone as a conduit for all that. I think it's great. I'm happy Apple's doing that. Yeah,
me too. A couple other things that were happening. Apple Maps, they're adding a Waze-like feature in there with crowdsourcing, which I found to be really interesting. Warren and I both talked about this yesterday on Mac to the Future with Guy Searle. This is an interesting coming out with the Apple Maps feature that's going to allow you to be able to report accidents, hazards, and speed checks along the way. So if you want to be able to report that accident or hazard or speed check, you can do it from within Apple Maps and as well as through CarPlay on Apple Maps. So it's going to have a nice big button on there. You can tap, there's an accident here. You can tap it and report it. So interesting, and doing it just similar to what Google does with Waze. So
what I haven't tried is if you actually need to be in the maps, if you actually need to be like in an active map to do it. Because it would actually be good if you're just driving around and say, hey, yes, there's an accident here,
Yeah. Well, with the pictures they're showing on Mac Rumors, it looks like that they were in a trip and they went and tapped report an accident right where they were.
So a live test.
Yeah.
There's an accident.
Most of the time, you're probably not navigating with maps. If you're in your own hometown, you're not navigating, right? So you don't even have it open.
Okay. Sending report.
Yeah. And it just open up maps. So you don't even, I don't know. Is that bad? If they're going to be mad that there's an accident in my house?
Now you cause trouble.
So you do not have to be in a Maps app. If you're driving somewhere and you see traffic or an accident, you just say, hey, there's an accident. And she opened up Maps and marked it.
One other thing that people were up in arms with this past week was YouTube's website. Picture-in-picture works again in iOS 14.5 beta because, everybody is freaking out anytime you can't do picture-in-picture with YouTube when you're watching a video. So apparently it broke for a bit and then now it's working again. So let's hope YouTube keeps that working because that's been an on again and off again problem with the picture-in-picture, especially if you're not a premium subscriber, which I am. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. So, all right, well, that's beta for this week. We went through that, and I wanted to move on and talk about Shelly's new updated book, iOS Access for All. So you updated it for iOS 14. And Shelly, how long have you been publishing this book now?
Since iOS 7. So that goes back. That goes back to 2014. It's funny because the way it happened, iOS 6 was still a thing. And I thought I'm going to do a version for iOS 6 really quick. And then when iOS 7 comes out, how big of an update could that be? That's not going to, it's iOS 7.
There's a lot.
And I didn't end up publishing the iOS 6 version, which I think was good because once we sort of learned what iOS 7 was going to be, I just changed my plan completely. And so I've been doing it since then.
No, it's an awesome book, and I look forward to talking to you. You were first time on the show last year, and I'm going to look forward every year after that because you just have some amazing updates on it.
Thanks.
And I highly recommend this book. And some of the things I wanted to talk about was not reading the whole book here, but we want to go through and actually find out some of the highlighted features that were released for accessibility in iOS 14 that you covered.
Sure. Well, there's several features that have to do with VoiceOver, the screen reader that's part of iOS, and artificial intelligence or augmented reality, artificial intelligence primarily. And so it's just to back up a little bit, a screen reader basically reads the interface if you're blind or visually impaired or have some other print disability. And VoiceOver is the name of the screen reader that's part of iOS. I never know how many people know that, so I feel like I should explain it.
No, thank you.
But what they did in iOS 14 was add a number of features that allow VoiceOver to describe what's being seen either in the camera or on the iOS screen. And collectively, those features are called voiceover recognition. So the practical application, for example, is you could take your phone and in the camera app or in the magnifier app, you can point it around your room or your neighborhood, and it'll have it identify things like that's a red car, that's a street, that's a street sign, and it'll actually read street signs or other incidental text it finds in your environment. And that's useful if you're visually impaired and you want to know, what does that sign say? You want to know, I think I'm going down the street to, they said there's going to be a red car out front. Oh, well, there's a house with a red car. Now maybe I'll find the house number. Any number of reasons that you might want to know what the images are in your camera. The other thing, and this is a really interesting tool that they added, a lot of apps are VoiceOver compatible, which means that the VoiceOver screen reader will read what's in the app interface. It'll read the menus, it'll read the button labels. Sometimes apps are not compatible. And what happens if you in VoiceOver are reading an app or using an app like that is you'll get button, 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 label, label, label. And that doesn't mean anything to somebody who's blind or visually impaired. Well, sure. Screen recognition using the machine learning in the phone will now actually attempt to identify what those interface items are. So, for example, the back button at the top left of most screens, it knows what that looks like. So it'll say that's a back button, or it'll read a label that has a word that hasn't been identified in the accessibility API. So even though that label is perfectly legible in print, it's not been made accessible. So that's a really cool way to make apps that aren't otherwise accessible at least partially accessible. It's not perfect, but basically voiceover recognition is doing a combination of providing information about your environment around you and information that's on your phone screen. Another thing I'll mention is image recognition that's also within the voiceover recognition suite. So how often have you seen a tweet where there is another tweet or something else that's pictured? So they've put an image in the tweet, but it has text in it. That is the most annoying thing in the world if you're blind, because you can't read that. That doesn't have text. So what image recognition does is essentially OCRs that text and reads it for you. There have always been ways to get around it. You could take an image and scan it in the phone and have it, but I'd have it read to you, but it's like 2 or 3 extra steps. And so the whole voiceover recognition suite with machine learning has made it possible to automate a lot of that stuff and just, give you better information about your environment.
Yeah, that's great. And, for some of the other features, one thing I know everybody's really liking the magnifying glass or the magnifier. That I know that's become a mainstream thing now because it's in the you can put it in. Now the magnifier that's in for low vision. They've done some more updates on that, right? Magnifier
came out first in I think iOS 11, and in iOS 14 they gave it sort of a facelift. They also made it sort of a quasi app. Before, you would enable it with accessibility shortcut and it wouldn't appear on your home screen, but you could call it up with a triple tap of the home button back when we had home buttons. But now, once you enable it in settings, it'll show up as an app on your home screen or in Control Center. And so you can use it just the way you would use a magnifying glass. It has levels of zoom that are based on the quality of your camera. It also has the ability to change contrast. You can freeze frame. So, for example, I will take and magnify a label for something I want to cook. I want to read the recipe on it, or I want to read what's in it, and I'll freeze frame that. And then I can look at it to my heart's content, even after I've put the box down. There's a special feature in Magnifier for iOS, for iPhone 12 Pro, 12 Pro Max, and 2020 iPad Pros, all of which have the LiDAR sensor, and that's called people detection. And using LiDAR, people detection allows your phone to tell you whether there is a person in your vicinity and how far away they are from you. And that's useful if you want to maintain social distance, for example. It's coincidental that it came out in 2020, but it's also helpful. Like if you're a blind person and you're walking through a train or a bus and you want to find out which chair is occupied or not occupied without having to touch the person nearby, you can use your phone to identify whether there's a person nearby. So people detection, again, is only available in the LiDAR equipped devices. What's exciting about people detection, and obviously Apple isn't telling us this, but the use of LiDAR for an accessibility feature says a lot about what kind of accessibility we might expect if Apple ever does any sort of wearable devices. Because I think a big issue for people who have accessibility interests is whether, say, glasses or VR headsets would be accessible to them because it's such a visual environment. But the fact that they're using LiDAR in this way and not just taking a feature that everybody else has and finding a way to make it accessible, but creating a custom accessibility feature using the hardware and software that's already in the phone, that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, really exciting. LiDAR is just amazing, and I think there's just more and more we are going to be able to do with LiDAR, with accessibility, but with just photography in general. So it's really great. And then as far as the hearing part, I was intrigued. I was going to talk about this tip last week, but I wanted to save it for this week with you. Is the sound recognition. When you enable it, it does allow your device to listen to a familiar sound like a baby crying or a siren. Have you used that? And how does that really work?
It works surprisingly well. Basically, there are a number of sounds listed in settings. You can't tune it to particular sounds. Yeah. Baby crying, water running, a loud alarm, a phone ringing. There, I think maybe 8 or 10 of them. And basically what you do is once you turn sound recognition on and tell the phone, this is the sound I want you to listen for, whenever it hears it, it'll flash an LED flash at you. So if you want to know whether your doorbell's ringing or your baby's crying or your water's running, and it's a great feature, which again, I feel like has so much potential because those are specific sounds and it's tempting to go, well, why didn't they do, I think dog bark and cat meow is in there, but, oh, why didn't they do my favorite sound? Well, this is essentially the opportunity for you to see what the technology makes possible. There's all sorts of ways they could improve this in the future. But as a practical matter, knowing whether your baby is crying or your doorbell's ringing, that's pretty darn useful for somebody with a hearing impairment.
Yeah. And then the other one that was a lot of press got a lot of press when iOS 14 first came out was the back tap, the assistive touch, being able to back tap. And then many people were turning it on, but especially when you set the back tap to do a screenshot, like I'd be doing screenshots like crazy, but with the back tap, how is that as far as the physical and motor part of accessibility helped people with that?
Well, that's what's funny because back tap is, I'll say a couple things about it. It really did capture the mainstream's attention. And the way I used it when I was working on the book, I used a triple tap for I think I had a shortcut connected to a triple tap that I don't think I had it taking the picture. I think it had it taking the picture on screen and doing something to it because I was using files and moving it to iCloud Drive and getting it ready to put in the book or something like that. I forget exactly what shortcut I had, and then my double tap, because I use both dark mode and smart invert colors because it's easier for me to work with the phone when the screen is dark and the text is light. And that's my double tap. But as far as how it's used by people who actually have a motor disability, it's kind of an interesting thing because it's not intuitive that the most easy thing to do would be to take your finger and tap kind of hard on the back of your phone because people with motor touch disabilities often have difficulty touching the phone with sufficient force to cause a gesture to happen. And there are other features like with assistive touch and with switches and touch accommodation that actually account for that and accommodate for that. And so I think back tap is mostly about being able to hold your phone in such a way that finger that's naturally behind the phone gets to do something, gets to do the gesture, even if the finger in front of the phone, even if you moved your other hand around and were trying to do a gesture, you might have difficulty with it. And it also, it's a little bit of a proof of concept too, because there are a couple of other features buried within accessibility that do the same sort of thing. For example, you can create your own voiceover gesture that will do any command you give to it, whether it be a shortcut or whether it be taking a screenshot. So I can make up my own little voiceover gesture and, swipe down to the left on my phone, or quadruple tap with 5 fingers, or whatever, any gesture that's available to me that's not used for something else. And there's a couple of other places in iOS too, where they've essentially created the ability for you to map a gesture or an action to something that it's not intended for, which is great, because that means that as they continue to evolve the phone and the operating system in such a way that like it does more and more stuff, if I physically can't do that stuff for some reason, if I can't do it the way the mainstream would, I've got 3 or 4 other ways to do it, whether it's making a voiceover gesture or using a back tap or creating a shortcut. Apple is saying to me, all right, well, I didn't think about the fact that you wouldn't be able to do this gesture in the way that it's typically done. But you know what? Here's an interface over here that's going to allow you to do it in the way that's most convenient for you.
Yeah, no, it was definitely unique. And like we said, mainstream jumped on this quick, but it's a wonderful book. I not only do you do a lot of great stuff about accessibility, but I like how you've really gone through and talk about the history of what's going on with Apple and what they've changed, the services that are available. You described the iPhone, which is great, which we'll talk about iPhone here in a minute. But no, it's really a well laid out book, and I think it's a great read for anybody, even if you're not need the accessibility information. I think it's still worth it, and being able to take a look and read this book. It's really great.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel like there's a tendency with accessibility to only talk about accessibility, but everybody who has an iPhone with a disability also needs to know what iCloud Drive is, or also needs to know how the control center works. And so I couldn't explain the things I needed to explain without that context. And because nobody was telling me that I had a word count limit, I kind of just kept going.
Oh, that's what I mean. That's what I really liked. I mean, you talked about iTunes Match, you talk about iTunes, you talk about the Apple Music. You're talking about all the stuff that we all use all the time. But people who have some accessibility issues, they need these available on the iPhone. You need to know about these services too, and what they can what they can do. So no, it's just a great read, and we definitely have links in the show notes on how to get the book and grab it. And I appreciate you giving us some insights on the accessibility. Kind of moving on a little bit, and you mentioned earlier in the show you had we were able to get some review units for the iPhone 12 and the 12 Pro. I was curious as far as accessibility goes. I know in the book you talk about Apple took a long time to. I remember reading back when you said I had a 3GS too, and I know you say that was your first iPhone, and it was very difficult for anybody with the limitations with accessibility back in those days. But Apple's come obviously a long way. How's the 12 really gone from back then to today?
Well, the 12, most of accessibility is a software function, as you can imagine, right. And physical, so I meant. Yeah. Every once in a while, there is something that's done in hardware that has accessibility implications. And the 12 is not a real good exemplar of that. The 10s are a better exemplar, because when the home button went away, it meant that gestures had to change. And I think for some people with physical disabilities, or even for blind people, the change to swiping up was a challenge, because there's an alternative version of that for VoiceOver. So if you're talking about the 12 specifically, there's not a lot in terms of things that are new in accessibility. There's not a lot about the 12 that is specific to accessibility, other than, say, the LiDAR and the support for AI-based features like VoiceOver recognition. And that's supported in the hardware, but it's, turned on in the software, if that makes any sense.
Okay. So, but it sounds like you're happy with the 12 for your, you want it to be your daily driver. I don't know.
I'm cheap. I think I'm probably gonna end up sending it back. I'll be honest. I love the 12 Pro because, and it's not even just the LiDAR. Even the 12, people talk so much about the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max cameras because people who care about cameras pick those two phones, which makes sense. But the 12 camera is great. The low light photography in the 12 camera is amazeballs. And the only reason that I know that the 12 Pro is better is because I have one. If I didn't have one, and if I were comparing it to my 10R, which is still a fine phone, I wouldn't know. I would be super impressed by the 12, and I am impressed by the 12. It's low light photography is, really quite amazing. And if you're not the best photographer in the world, it'll compensate for your mistakes. And oh, by the way, it's got all the AI based accessibility features. So I can point my camera or my magnifier app at something and have it tell me what's going on in ways that it couldn't before. So it's a solid release. And I said when the line was announced that I love the idea that they basically created a baseline. So you're not having to choose whether you get the crappy processor or the good processor. You're choosing really fine grained stuff. Like, do I want the best camera, or do I want the better camera, or do I want the tiny phone? And it just makes it easier to sort of justify your choice, which is why I'm still so sad that the iPhone mini isn't doing better.
Yeah, I agree with you. Warren, did you have anything to add before we move on to the tips for this week?
No, just definitely got me thinking a lot. And my only comment is a lot of these accessibility features make it into the mainstream, but they also make it into the in between, like where I am now, where my vision's. I use magnifier all the time, and I wouldn't have needed it maybe 5-10 years ago, but I do now. And, it's a great feature. I can't, I'm either putting on reading glasses or using magnifier. And, the same with, the sound thing with the dogs barking. I use that too, because I sleep with earplugs in my ears because my wife watches TV, and it's good to have something to, if my dogs bark, to know if they're barking. So, a lot of these accessibility features are, just great features on the phone that a lot of times they just make it into the mainstream because, people see how great they are. So I'm into it. Yeah.
No, that's great. I really appreciate your comments on that. And, let's go ahead and we'll move on to a couple tips here. Actually, I found this was an interesting tip. This was an article in 9 to 5 Mac. I didn't even know about this. The AirPods, and the AirPods Pro. I've got a pair of AirPods that are actually the first generation AirPods, and they originally launched back in 2016. I can't believe it's been 5 years since the AirPods first came out, and they've got distinct models now with the AirPods and the AirPods Pro. You and I both are using the AirPods Pro, Warren, but they don't give any specifics as how many battery cycles will be left for this, and these old AirPods had died pretty quickly on me. I think within a year to 2 years they were already diminished in this. So, but this company actually came out here as far as offering a replacement, and it'll be with the AirPods Max, which I wouldn't understand. You wouldn't be doing that because you already got warranty for those. And what they'll do is they'll actually send you a refurbished, clean, and updated version, but with the same model of your AirPods for like around $60, and it's cheaper than going out and buying a new pair if you didn't want to. So you basically what you do is you put the order in, you swap it, and you order it. They're going to ship you a new set that you keep the case, but you get the new AirPods, and then you send back the old ones, and for about half the cost of what a new pair of AirPods would be. So I thought this was interesting. It's a company called Pod Swap, relatively new service, and I actually tried it. I'm actually I went and bought them, and it looks like for the AirPods it's $59.99, and then for the AirPods. If you I believe the AirPods Pro will be a little more, but some easy options to take a look at this. Warren, what'd you think? I thought this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at now. AirPods, the Pro. No, they don't have the Pro yet today. They have you could get one or two right now. So one's 59 and the other's 89. Yeah, I mean, I think I might have a pair of old ones lying around. I might go ahead and revive them if possible.
I just decided to do it. I said I thought this would be great. Like with shipping and everything, it's like around $64 in tax, of course.
Yeah, it's not bad as long as you're not getting a dirty pair, and
Yeah, but they're gonna get my dirty pair.
They must do. I mean, I don't know what they do with them. They must I guess they I don't know. Maybe they refurbish them or throw them away, but who cares? Yeah, very cool.
Shelly, do you use AirPods at all?
I do. I have second generation original AirPods. I also have a first generation pair that died, and I would want to investigate more about how long these things would last. But I have a niece that loves everything Apple, and if I could get her a pair of AirPods for $60, she'd be pretty happy with me.
Yeah. Well,
she's graduating high school this year. I can't afford an Apple Watch for her, but maybe some AirPods.
Yeah, that might just be a cool thing. So check it out. We have links in the show notes for that. A couple other things I want to mention. I did this as part of tips, actually. The Chrome OS for iOS, Chrome browser for iOS is now testing locking your incognito tabs with Touch and Face ID. While Chrome for iOS hasn't seen a update just like the rest of it we talked about earlier, the Chrome is going to let you lock the incognito tabs so they'll be blurred in a tab switcher until you confirm that it's you using a Touch or Face ID. Google's calling it a way to add more security as you multitask across apps. This is also useful for someone using either an iPhone or an iPad to perform a new search. And they give a hypothetical scenario for this. And so this is interesting to see what they're doing with this and adding these types of features. What'd you think of this? I thought this was interesting.
The first thing I learned is how to close out all my tabs when I'm going incognito.
Exactly.
So this is not needed for me. I know how to close out my tabs, but I guess if you're doing something that you don't want to be doing and you don't know how to close your tabs out, then yeah, it's a good idea. The iPhone blur, it's weird because the iPhone will blur some things automatically and some things it doesn't. So it kind of knows. You notice that, like if it's a bank app, it knows how to blur it when it's switching between apps, and some things it knows and something like that. Anyways, yeah, it's cool. Why not?
Shelly, do you use the Chrome browser at all?
I do. I don't use incognito nearly as much as I should. It's probably not. This is probably not something I'd end up using, but the reason I use Chrome is I like the ability to, and I know you do with Safari and iCloud, but I like the ability to sync bookmarks across not only Macs and phones, but every other machine I might come across, and so I use Chrome for that reason. Not so much on iOS, but I mean it's a good feature. I'm glad they're adding stuff like that. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Then one last thing I want to talk about was the Microsoft To Do. They've had a To Do app for a while. I forgot that they bought was it Wunderlist, I think it was.
Yeah.
And they turned it into Microsoft, of course. And Microsoft To Do has now added a new home screen widget for iPhone and iPad. And they released this update today as we record this for those devices. And the big focus was to being able to have the 3 new widgets that'll make it easier to manage your schedule from your to-do list. So it's right into the widgets, which I think is really cool. I don't know if do you use this at all, Warren, to do this with the Microsoft?
I do. They also have a Windows app. So actually, I put I use the Windows app because I use Apple reminders for my reminders, and To Do reads off that if you have the iCloud sync to it. So I use a To Do, and I have it on my phone. I haven't put the widgets on because I don't think I have the space for it on my screen, but they are there. I could confirm they're there.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, I think we've come to a close of another episode. What a great discussion. And we'll ask if we can find Shelly here in just a moment, but let's go ahead and wrap things up. That is a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter @intouchwithios, or you can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts and many others. But better yet, go to our website intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter @DaveG65. And Shelly, thank you so much for being here. Where can everybody find you and all your great work?
Well, David Warren, thanks so much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter @Shelly, SHELLY. I've got Twitters for the book and for the podcast, but I'll just tell you the websites for those. The podcast is Parallel Pods on Twitter, or just go to relay.fm/parallel. It's a podcast about technology and accessibility. all together in one little package. And then the book is at iosaccessbook.com. You can buy the book directly from my site in EPUB or PDF format, or I will sell you a zip file that's a combo PDF and EPUB because people want that. Or if you want to, you can buy from the Apple Bookstore, which is easier for you, but less lucrative for me. Do what you think is right.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And please go check out her podcast. That's an absolutely great podcast to listen to. And Warren, thank you as always for being here. And anything going on in Mac to the Future, our Facebook group this week?
Yeah, just normal stuff. But I rather thanks Shelly for being here as well. And definitely, it's always good. I learn more with you being on the show than I think a lot of other times. So it's really beneficial for me. I'm going to go play with some of the things you were talking about. But no, thanks again. We really do appreciate coming.
Yes. I learned a few things as well. I'll be going and learn some more things as well with accessibility. So, all right, everybody. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk again soon.